a lot of things that have to do with parenting that you can really apply this kind of stuff to, particularly when you think about game theory. A lot of parenting decisions, you have to realize that you're going to be interacting with your children in the future. And that particularly comes with things like following through on consequences, as an example. It's extremely important to do that. So one of the talks that I actually give to parenting groups, believe it or not, they'll sometimes have poker groups included and talk about parenting, I know. So one of the things that I talk about is sort of managing ultimatums with your children, because ultimatums are just bets. In fact, ultimatums are specifically bluffs, right? Because you're asking someone to stop the behavior that they're doing right then. If they call, that's bad for you, right? Because that means they're going to continue doing what they're doing. So ultimatums are just bluffing. And we can understand a lot about how to manage ultimatums by understanding how bluffing works at the table. And one thing that new players to the game really think is that when they bluff, they think if they bet a lot of money, then they'll win and their opponent will fold, because clearly if they bet a lot of money, that has to mean they have a good hand and their opponent will be scared of the bet, and so on and so forth. The problem is that's actually got two issues associated with it. One has to do with game theory, one has to do with math. When you have a market, the more that you invest in the market, the less your return is. Okay, so that's super simple, right? So we know that they're going from it mathematically from the opposite. The question you should ask is not how much do I have to bet to get them to fold, but how little do I have to bet to get them to fold. That's going to be the mathematically better choice, right? If I can bet $100 to win 1,000, I'm going to do a lot better than if I bet $1,000 to win 1,000, right? So now we can take this idea that the smallest bet is usually the best bet, and usually a big bet gets called, right? Into parenting in terms of this bluffing problem, okay? So I know you're grounded for 2 months. There isn't a child on earth who thinks they're not leaving that house for 2 months. Are you kidding me? But that's where parents go. I mean, what parents do is they say, I want my child to stop this behavior, so I'm going to think of the biggest thing that matters to them. What is the biggest thing I can take away from this kid? Because that will get them to stop. And it's a crazy place to go. Because when you get called, you have nowhere to go from there. Just like when you make that big bet at the poker table, you're out of the tournament when you lose. You don't have anywhere to go from there. So instead, parents, and it's not believable to your child, because your child knows that you're going to be like, oh, you were so good over the weekend, I'm letting you off the ground thing. Like, we've all done that. Come on, like, seriously. Okay, so what you should do instead is say, what's the smallest thing that matters to my child? And it could be a variety of things, like you don't get video games tomorrow.
Yeah.
With a little child, it could be a timeout, right? Because separation from parent is so painful to a little child. So what's the smallest thing that matters to my child? Now the beauty of that is that if your child continues to behave in that way, you can escalate up, right? And trust me, it makes your life easier too, because it's easier to follow through on. I mean, it's much less painful for me to bluff for 400 than 1,000, right? Because when I'm wrong, I kind of get the same value out of bluffing in the sense that people know that I'm willing to bluff, but it only cost me $400. So it was a much less painful follow through on my part, right? If I've got to take video games away from my kids for a day, that's 1 day of policing. That's not such a big deal, right? If I tell them they can't play video games for 2 months, it's a pain in my ass. But that's where everybody naturally goes, is what's the biggest thing versus what's the smallest thing. And if you start with the smallest bet that I can make here, you know, you're going to tend to be much better. I will tell you, though, that I did escalate my child once. I started very small. She decided, as children will sometime when she was about 12, that there was nothing I could do to make her do her homework. It's actually true, by the way, if you think about it, right? Like, I can't do the homework for her, and if she literally just decides to be like Gandhi for a day and go on hundreds, I mean, what am I going to do? So I started delivering consequences, like I'm taking your Game Boy away. That's an easy one, you know, I do that. So this is what I'm going to explain to you. Your homework is your job, right? I work really hard. You have this roof over your head. You have food. You have all this stuff. That's my job. The reason why you're not in a sweatshop in Honduras is because you do homework. So consider that your job. This is the way you earn your stuff, okay? So you have all this stuff in your room. So I'm going to give you a choice now because I'm walking away now. I can't argue with you anymore because there's nothing rational going on. But you can choose to do your homework or not. I'm going to be okay with feeling like I'm failing the fact that, you know, because I'm going to get a call from your teacher or whatever. And, you know, I'm going to get over the fact that it's my ego involved too. I'm just going to let that go. And you can choose to do your homework or not. But if you choose not to do your homework, when you come home tomorrow, you will have nothing in your room because you haven't done your job. And I'd already taken quite a few things out of her room by this point, though. So she goes, okay. So she goes to sleep. She comes back the next day, and she has a mattress in her room. And she goes, Mom, why'd you take all that stuff out of my room? I said, well, we had this discussion last night. She goes, well, I didn't actually believe you do it. She still talks about that. She did her homework after that day.